What's up, Bria?
Man. Can you have allergies in January?
Yes,
Okay.
you can. You can have allergies at any time of the year.
Okay. Then I'm good. I just have allergies.
The chemical reactions that cause allergies don't discriminate based on season, unfortunately.
Trash. How are you?
I'm good. So this is Mayron on, the podcast yet to be named. Hopefully soon. You'll find out more about me as this podcast goes on. And I'm here with Bria.
Hey, I'm Bria. I do the things. You'll find that out as this podcast goes on.
And today, I think we want to talk about the state of R&B music.
Yes.
Especially within the past year. And how much it's changed and how much it's grown as a genre. Mm-hmm. I think what's really interesting, and just to start off fresh, is that R&B has turned into rap and rap has turned into R&B, and they're kind of the same thing now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to necessarily differentiate them anymore. I would say there used to be much more clear-cut lines. Like if you look back,
without a doubt.
Yeah, if you look back, you used to have a rapper as a feature on an R&B song or a R&B artist doing the hook on your rap song, and it was very easy to delineate the two. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not sure if you can delineate the two, right?
Yeah, we went from having a rapper featuring an R&B artist or vice versa, an R&B song with a rap verse, to now these artists kind of just doing both or enlisting other people that do both also to join them, and just everybody does all the things.
And this is not a bad thing at all.
No, not at all.
I think a lot of people have the misconception that this blending is a bad thing. A lot of people don't like the rappers singing or their singers rapping, but I think it allows the artists to sort of reach their full potential, allows them to try things, and overall makes them better artists.
Yeah, I do think it changes the sound, and I think as far as R&B is concerned, and I feel like certain communities really protect and occupy R&B, which is why there's a little bit more pushback. Same way that there is pushback on the hip-hop side, from like old heads not wanting the sound to change and go in the direction that it is. I feel the same way for in R&B as far as like choir singers and people like theatrical singers that like really took having like a strong vocal ability seriously.
Well, it goes to the point, I guess, of what R&B used to be about and what R&B is about today. I think what R&B used to be about, it used to be about the singing, right? It used to be very, the lyrical content was often, not light, it was often heavy, but it was delivered in a way that wasn't super complex, but the depth and range of the voices that were there were super complex.
Yeah, it was in the talent.
Right? It was the way Luther Vandross sang. It was the way Marvin Gaye sang the words. It wasn't necessarily just the words themselves. They could sing anything. They could sing the national anthem, and you'd be like, this is great.
Yeah, it was the feeling that it invoked.
Certainly. And now it's more so on the lyrical side, right? Mm-hmm. What R&B has done in the past, I would say 2 to 3 years especially, is there's been a huge resurgence of just lyricism in R&B and storytelling in R&B.
Yes.
That wasn't necessarily there, especially in 2000 to 2010.
Mm-hmm. And I think we can attribute a lot of that to the progression of hip hop. We might not necessarily want to, but I think that kind of pushed a lot of these artists to kind of be more narrative and more storytelling, especially when you're on a hook or when you're singing your own hook to try and further the story or better explain the story. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what we come to.
What's interesting is you have, I would almost say, more subtlety these days in R&B. Not to say R&B wasn't subtle before, but there was a lot of, again, large voices. So if you think of large voices today in R&B, you think of Beyonce, obviously. She has an incredible voice, very large, very vocal. But a lot of the market now has much quieter voices. Mm-hmm. Think of Six Black, or Black, sorry, but I call him Six Black. If you think of Summer Walker, if you think of her.
Sabrina the cancel
Claudio,
girl.
Yeah. Yeah. The cancel girl. But even things like Bryson Tiller, these voices aren't amazing. That's not to say they're bad, but they are not to the quality of Beyonce. And I think we can all agree that.
Nor do they try to be.
And they shouldn't be, because who they are is they are subtle voices. Mm-hmm. They are comforting voices. They are voices that get in between the cracks and the crevices of your ears. And the way you listen to them is very different than the way you listen to a Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
You are no longer necessarily engulfed by the voice, which allows more room for the lyrics, which I think is an interesting direction for it to go in. And it'll always come back around, right?
Without a doubt.
There will always be room for people that can sing, think of belt from their stomach. Mm-hmm. One guy is Jacob Banks. He's from the UK. Not a lot of Americans have necessarily heard of him, but he has a strong and powerful voice. He performed at Afropunk. And I remember an Afropunk this year in Brooklyn. It's in a park. And he was one of the opening acts for Afropunk, so it was early in the day. So the line goes from the park about a mile back. You could hear Jacob Banks from a mile back. So those voices are...
Especially for him to be an opener, he doesn't have the tech equipment that these headliners have, you know?
These are fewer and far between, but they still exist. But what's what filled the space is people like her, right? People like her and him and they, which is really interesting little like collection.
Right.
But what they've done is they've filled that space that used to be filled by voices with amazing depth and storytelling. And that's a little different than your Soul for Reals and you know, like your Color Me Bads. It's a very different tone. It's a very different, like, I guess that is like classic R&B to a lot of people, right? Like the Soul for Reals, the Color Me Bads, the Tevin Campbells. And not taking away from any of that, but it's definitely a tonal shift. And with that tonal shift, produce a lot of good music. So what were like some of your favorites from, I guess, this tonal shift that R&B has had?
I definitely would say Summer Walker has been, I think, a surprising fave for me, just because I think her lyricism isn't something that I necessarily expected or would expect to like connect to or feel necessarily connected with. And like I have that argument with like, another reason why I liked Jhené Aiko for a moment is because I feel like the type of R&B that she sang was something that I like connected with. It wasn't just like, oh, it's me, I'm heartbroken. It was more like kind of like, fuck these niggas. These niggas are fuckboys and they don't recognize how lit I am.
And that's great.
She is.
Well, Sailing Not Selling, that was great. I'll put it that way.
Oh my gosh, yes. Not throwing shade, but that's why I said I liked Jhené. You know what I'm saying? But
well, she hasn't really produced much like else that is noteworthy, right?
Not really.
I can't think of another thing that I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. It's one of the reasons I fuck with Kehlani so much when she was coming up, right? Cloud 9, tracks like Honey. Like, there's certain tracks where Kehlani just, also in the same vein, just like did something where she didn't have to belt out her from her stomach, but you felt every word. And it chilled your bones. And you sat there, and then you got comfortable, and then it warmed you from your heart. Like, that's what R&B does now. So yeah, definitely I think Summer Walker's in that same vein.
I was a huge fan of Raven Lenae's project.
So you think she a singer, not a rapper?
I mean,
talk to me about that, because I remember Moon Shoes and like the Recess tape and things like that, and she definitely rap it. Like she definitely tells a story about how she's in the car and like at school and like at lunch. Like she can sing. But you consider her more R&B than rap, and it goes back to our earlier point, right, of what's R&B and what's rap.
Right. Well, no, I mean, Raven Lenae dropped an EP, and that's what she's calling it, Crush, that was solely executively produced by Steve Lacy, and she's singing on the entire thing. She's just singing. There's no rap segment. There's not even like a her or a LMA type, you know, a voiceover interlude, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like her singing.
Less interludes in R&B, please.
And I like... And what I think I like so much about the project and about her singing so much is just like how thematic it was. I really like that she like pulled from an era, like pulled from a vibe. And I think that was really smart on her behalf and on like Steve Lacy. I'm so for these amazing producers executively producing like more R&B albums. And you're starting to see that a little bit more. Even when like, this didn't come out in 2018, but like with Shlomo completely producing a Jeremiah project. Yeah. Like more of that, please. More of that.
Well, going back to Steve Lacy, he's part of another collective that's also like, what are you? Are you R&B? Are you rap? Like,
right.
Who are the internet and like what did they do? Because they released a project, and I think if you listen to the internet's earlier projects, you definitely like, yeah, they're more of an R&B group. They got the whole singing thing going. But then like you hear Sid's project, it's just straight rapping.
Yeah,
and they make a lot of fun music too. So what's the I mean,
right? It can get very like jam bandy really quick, which isn't bad at all. But it's also like, is this still considered R&B or is this?
Are we doing a thing where we're putting people in boxes that we shouldn't be putting them in?
Right. And I feel like it's interesting that we're having this argument about R&B because I feel like this is the same argument we were having about like hip hop and the progression of it. And it's like, where hip hop is dead, where is it going? It's not a very like...
It's not linear.
Yeah, it's not a better understood genre anymore. There's so many subgenres and like how many people fought against that. It's funny to see that same progression necessarily happening with like R&B. And now we're like, do we allow this? Like, is this still considered what this is? Or, like, so do we push it out of the genre or do we expand the genre?
Well, keeping with that sort of genre blending, like, Lil Baby and Gunna are technically rappers, but
they be singing their
asses
off, bro.
Like, Gunna sings. like you watch Gunna's Colors like YouTube video, and like it doesn't look like he's rapping. It doesn't seem like he's rapping. If you listen to Lil Baby's music, like yeah, he has verses, but there's a lot of singing that's involved, or at least sing-songy things. And I'm not sure if that's. I understand why people are like, yeah, that's that. Nah, they're still rapping and that's mumble rap. But I'm also like, kind of, but not really. They're also just singing what they want to sing.
Right. Like, is that something that we're going to allow? And I think people forget, like, some of your older hip hop heads, your older hip hop legends used to be singing their ass off too. If Mos Def wants to come out and say he's an R&B singer, are we going to deny him?
Yeah.
Are we going to deny him? This man has completely sung on tracks before.
And it's been amazing.
You know, and is it like, do we allow Mos Def to because like at first he gave us bars and now he's an R&B singer? Are we upset that these like little niggas like Lil Baby and shit are coming out the jump rapping and singing and we don't know which box to put them in first?
I think it's more so what sound is familiar to us, right? Mos Def, I think, has a way of making everything sound familiar and like it gives us an era to like sort of like latch on to.
Talk about storytelling, like
well, for sure, right? Like Mos Def creates a narrative with his music. And he's an exception to the rule, and I think people like their exceptions, but they don't like them to make them the rule.
Yeah.
But the problem is like people learn from the exceptions. What's happening, I think, is a lot of people coming up, they like the people that stood out. So this is the 808s and Heartbreaks like generation, right? This is the Cudi generation. These are the things that these people learn from. They listen to this. They listen to Wayne. They listen to Lollipop Wayne, not necessarily just mixtape Wayne.
Yeah.
And you can have your feelings on that,
yeah.
but at
Lollipop
the same time, that Lil Wayne, that I feel like I'm dying Lil Wayne, that Lil Wayne who is semi singing,
influence these little niggas.
yeah,
like,
brought
that are here
all
now.
these people up, right? Drake is not to blame for this alone because you have to remember Drake used to love Ninth Wonder and Little Brother was his favorite band. And
right.
He used to be rapping, but over time, like hanging out with Kanye, hanging out with Cudi, and hanging out with these other artists, they shifted more towards the singing side. And like, there's been a lot of artists I think this year that dropped as well that like kept up with that. One particular one.
Yeah, what were your favorites?
So
I know Sir was one of your favorites, and he's somebody that I kind of feel like doesn't necessarily fit a box at all. But like, who fucking cares? November was amazing, so much that we already talked about it on the Best of 2018 episode.
Yeah, definitely. So Sir, I think, is exactly what I just said. Right? Sir comes from the class of Cudi and Drake and Ye, but also has like bars and just chooses to sing them.
Yeah.
Right? He chooses
and
well, that's the other thing. A lot of these new people, not that they want to do this, they also just can't sing.
Yeah.
But Sir
we let Mos Def be tone deaf as fuck sometimes on the beat. Let's not forget.
That's true. But Sir can sing and chose to sing like this in this style. And you can see how powerful the style is when you have someone like Sir doing it. Yeah. So it's a matter of, I guess, like quality over quantity. But you also, you have your classic R&B act still coming out. So Selection dropped a tape with Devin Tracy, Black Label Series. And he's just a singer. I believe he's from New York City. Like, he just sings his ass off. If you want to listen to just people singing, there's still plenty of that.
Yeah.
I mean, Lloyd dropped this year, right? He had an album called True. People have feelings about Lloyd, but I still have a special place for
Lloyd the GOAT, man.
Yeah.
5'2", Fine 2, he's the GOAT.
And like, he released a very solid classic R&B album that came out to a lot of acclaim.
And I would say he's considered a classic R&B artist. Like, no one's talking legendary status over here, but like classic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
5'2", like that's a thing. So I don't know why wasn't that on as many people's radars? Do you think? That being what it is, the album was quality, but also he's a pretty quality artist. Yeah, he's been pretty quiet.
But it's not the sound, right? People love going with the current sound, and that is not the current sound. I think Lloyd had a great cult following. I think Lloyd did great for himself. What's interesting about Lloyd, and what's really cool about Lloyd, is if you look at his comeback story. So, the reason Lloyd was gone off the scene for so long, essentially a really bad contract. And he got destroyed. So he actually went back to school. He finished college. He helped his sister out.
You guys want to take care of his family.
He did all the right things, and he slowly grinded his way back out. And this album is a culmination of all that work. I understand Caramel's a very corny song. But True, like, if you listen to that, there's a song called True off the album. The album's, I believe, also called True. And that tells a story of, like, how he came about. And I would recommend everyone going through a tough time to listen to that. But what's interesting is, like, shifting gears a little, is, like, I was making the point about big classic R&B acts still existing. Like, you still have the LMAs, right? Who just, they made an R&B album, and
completely, thoroughly R&B.
And, like, I don't know how you feel about, I thought the
Her
music...
too, I would say.
I thought the music was cool, and Her Part 2 as well. I thought the music was cool. I wasn't like super enamored with it like I was with like a black or a lot of these newer styles, and the reason being is because I have heard a lot of people sing very well.
Right.
Right? I've already heard Marvin Gaye. I've heard Luther Vandross. I've heard Aretha Franklin. Rest in peace. Like, we've heard these amazing singers. It's very hard to top them. So the reason I think this new style has emerged and has become to the forefront of what is happening in R&B today is because it's a way to uniquely identify yourself, and because it's a way to actually express yourself in a way that's different than the way that's been done the entire time. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again, right? That's not how art works. Art evolves, not necessarily linearly, but it evolves in a forward progression.
Yeah.
It keeps moving forward. It keeps branching out. And that was what's really cool, I think, about this new style in this past 2 years. And there's so many examples of that. Like, Now released an album called Saturn. And
Huge fan of Now.
is it Now or Nao? Or I know it's Nao.
I think it's Now. Like, I don't consider an artist's name until I hear them say it.
Sure.
But I've heard people pronounce Now
As Now.
almost always.
As Now.
Now.
Yeah. And Saturn was really cool. It was 13 tracks, which is a great length for an album.
Yes.
I think in especially a year where everyone's like either 7 tracks
Or
and they're
24.
or they're like or like 33 and they're all like sometimes they're like 30-second tracks, which is like cool for some people but not cool for others. And then you have like the Chris Browns of the world that are like here's like 57 and they're all the same song over and over and over again. Now actually give you a body of work. Like, if you ever Saturn, Gabriel, Orbit, like, and each song is pretty unique in the way it sounds, and each song actually tells a story, and she was like thematically stuck to what she wanted. She did an album the way you'd want a rapper to do an album. She's like, oh, I have this thing, Saturn, like outer space.
Yeah, like I have a theme.
I'm gonna stick to that theme.
Yeah.
I'm gonna craft a story around the theme, and I'm gonna relate it back to real emotions that we all feel. And I'm like, oh, this is so nice.
I didn't look at it that way, yeah.
And I think that is one of the reasons her album was so good, but it was also kind of hard to digest sometimes because in this oversaturated year for R&B and hip-hop and the blending of the two, with an album like that, you kind of have to sit and listen a couple times to like fully get it, fully appreciate it.
And that is not how we consume music right now.
And do you think that has something to do with the way stylistically R&B has progressed? Because the way we consume music is very differently?
Without a doubt.
Because I think the replayability of like this music is less per se, right? I think I could listen to Aretha Franklin over and over and over and over again because of how strong the voice is.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily need to hear Black's album 7 times to like it. I can hear it once and be happy. But if I heard, like, for example, this Now album once, I would kind of forget it. Even though it was like an amazing album with a good body of work and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has a lot to do equally with the way that we consume music, but also the way that it's presented. I mean, I don't think...
Talk about that a little bit.
I think it's cute what a lot of artists like to say, like, oh yeah, like, I'm an artist and I'm here, like, basically I'm here for a lifetime, I'm here to make lifetime music, but like, honestly, are they making music to withstand a lifetime? I don't think so, especially because like the theme of right now is just like so much right now, like a vibe, it's a feeling, it's all like what's happening, it's all everything's a vibe, and a vibe is like in the now, you know what I'm saying? Like you
vibes
create
are
the vibe.
present, yeah
like it's present time. So I feel like that's how music is presented to us, maybe just because that's how we consume things. So I don't think a lot of these R&B artists are trying to I think certain ones are. I think that's why like LMA purposefully gave you like a very, very classic R&B album, especially if that to be like her debut. I think that was very purposeful.
And when we say classic, we mean classic in style, not necessarily music quality.
Right.
Because I don't want a bunch of people saying like, oh, she didn't make a classic. Like, well, no, it's classically built.
Right. Yeah, I don't necessarily enjoy this album, so I'm not saying it's like one of the best from the year. I'm just like, yeah, stylistically. For sure. Like, yeah, I think that was very purposeful. Like, and I think the way most R&B artists do that now is by, like, usually, like, paying, like, a huge ode or homage to their favorite R&B artist. Like, Kehlani did that so much with Lauryn Hill. She has that bitch on her forearm, on her bicep. Like, and I think that's the way a lot of people, like, do it. Like, yeah, like, but even still, the way the music is presented, like, right now, this music was giving me, like, Marvin Gaye vibes. So I was giving you all the Marvin Gaye vibes because, like, my mom used to play. And then this next project, though, I think I'm going to go, like, more rock star, more Rick James vibes with the R&B music. Like, that happens a lot with current R&B artists now. And I think older ones are very much like, this is me. This is my style. I'm not changing it. Even to the point of, like, their style of music. Like, this is what you are going to get.
What's interesting, I think you made a great point about like older R&B artists like cementing out their own style, is they had the space to do that.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't as many people.
For sure.
But if you look back at 2017 versus 2018, I think in 2017 you had a lot of artists that like had their own style. Daniel Caesar dropped in 2017, right? Everyone still plays that album.
Right. And that's why I think it's more long lasting or whatever, because he really cemented himself as like, I am this thing.
And yeah, he did things very precisely and very intentionally. And I don't know if that was necessarily done with a lot of albums. I think Black's album tried to do it. I think he had some pretty amazing songs with Cole and et cetera, et cetera. But I think overall there's a lot of songs that are kind of forgettable.
Very much so.
Yeah. I think the best version of the Black Bryson Tiller kind of like that sort of almost fuckboyish R&B is the Brent Faiyaz Sanderson project from 2 years ago. That's where Brent Faiyaz and, shout out Maryland, did this thing where he, I would say, he layered his music, right? Because what Bryson Tiller and what Black and what a lot of these sort of like subtle artists do is they try to layer their music very densely. So when you listen to it, like you can sort of get lost in the rhythm and get lost in the beat and sort of float along to the lyrics. They don't try and hit you over in the head with their sound like I keep going back to, but their composition of their essays is dense, right? If you look at a song as an essay, like the composition of the essay is very packed together. There's not a lot of line breaks. There's not a lot of periods. It's like big flowy sentences, 2 concise paragraphs, super dense. You got to read the sentence a bunch of times to understand it. And that is that sort of R&B at its best. I don't know if you grew up in this area or not, whoever's listening. If you ever had to do what's called an ECR, an extended constructed response, it's like a huge thing in like Maryland schools. That's the best version of this kind of R&B in my opinion. But it's hard to say. Because you still have like sort of the poppy like Khalid's and Miguel of the world who still make great music, which is completely different in style. And I don't like doing the male and female thing because I think that's dumb, especially in a genre like R&B. But like out of the women that released this year, who do you think had the best? I know Summer Walker was your favorite, but do you think that was also the best?
And I feel like I'm saying this without fully remembering all of the projects that came out in 2018.
Which is okay.
So one thing I'm kicking myself for. But I think one of the... and would this be considered R&B? I would still say so. I think one of the best R&B artists to come out, as far as like women are concerned, was Kali Uchis's Isolation. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed Isolation. I think it was a really, really solid... If we're calling it R&B, I don't see why we necessarily wouldn't. It's like a solid R&B album. Like, it was almost perfect.
Why wouldn't we call it R&B? Like, why do you think people... Because there's some pushback to that. I've heard that before. Like, why wouldn't we call it R&B?
I think people would want to call it more poppy. I think because a lot of her production was kind of like up-tempo and... I think there was one song where she was fully singing in Spanish, and I don't know why we want to, like, categorize that music as, like, what language it's in rather than like it can still be R&B music.
That's not fair.
Like that's actually what is it, Nuestra or something? That's one of my favorite songs on that album.
So what FKA Twigs said, when her second album came out, she made a great point. She's like, before everyone knew how I looked, no one called my music R&B, and then people saw that I was black
of color,
and all of a sudden my music is R&B, and I think. People look at Kali Uchis like, well, she doesn't look like an R&B singer, therefore she's not.
Yep.
And I'm like, but you don't have to, adhere to the look to be an R&B singer.
Yep. And I think that's the big thing. Is they look at her aesthetic and, like, even the way that she kind of carries herself as an artist sometimes, it is very poppy. She can be really, like, dramatic sometimes and more, like, in her look, in her aesthetic, in her, like, the curation of her Instagram page rather than, like, her actual music. Like, one of her biggest artists and the one that I feel like she would want to be compared the most to is like Amy Winehouse. And even though I think Amy Winehouse made like very heavy like R&B-esque music, like she's still considered like a pop star. And
Which
I think,
is weird, but
yes,
like
a pop star and like maybe a jazz musician, I think, before most people would consider her R&B.
So it gets into the real discussion of like, is R&B a useful box? Because there's soul, neo soul, jazz. All these things also get tended to lumped in, but I think they get tended lumped in because they need a way to box black artists, right?
Yep.
And
especially black women.
For sure. I think even like among like black women who rap, if they even sing a little, all of a sudden
They're singers.
They're singers, and I'm just like, but no, she's a rapper.
That's what happened to Lauryn Hill in the Fugees. Like, she was a rapper, and then she like, oh la la. Now she's a singer. Lauryn Hill's a singer.
And I'm like, that's not no. Lauryn Hill has bars, and that's
Like,
what she does.
what? Yeah.
Regardless of who wrote them, we're gonna.
I wasn't ready for that.
We're just gonna ignore that.
Yeah,
but she can still rap. Like, she can still rap, and like, I think that's where R&B is tricky, right? Because it has such like a rich musical tradition and history to pull from. Mm-hmm. Like, there are generations of what's considered R&B singers.
Right.
Like, there's Genuine and Tank and all those people, and then you obviously have the older ones that I keep going back to, like the Marvin Gaye.
And then you have like the rock and roll, rhythm and blues artists that
which
literally
is a
like,
whole
you know what
other
I'm
thing,
saying?
right?
And this is something we cannot say about like rap and hip hop music. You know what I'm saying? There's way less to compare it to. There's way less like footsteps to follow in.
Which is, I think, some of the pushback that we were getting to in the beginning of the episode, right? We were talking about sort of like the pushback against R&B old heads, where they're like, "What is this? This is an R&B." Mm-hmm. It's because there is something established. It's not hip hop, which is just pure rebellion. Everything's new all the time. Turn the crank. Let's go forward. It's more like, nah. Like, we came from the church. We came from blues. We came from the South. Like, we know what we are.
There is a blueprint, and you are not following it. Therefore, it is not that. Which is way easier to do when you have like a handbook that you can like flip through.
Totally.
Know?
And I don't know. I'm not here to say whether that's a good or a bad thing. I know it's producing a lot of amazing music. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, as long as it produces amazing music without hurting people and without taking away culture that's already been built upon, like,
right, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's not being taken away. That tradition is still there. As long as that's not being stripped away and taken from people, I'm okay with that.
Right. Like, one of the biggest takeaways I think I've had from 2018 is like, there are ways to have good debates. There are ways to have a positive conversation about like ill feelings. And I think that's something that like we as a culture right now could take to use better, much. I think we're used to getting offended and outraged by things and don't know how to have like positive or like conversations where you can take things away from it if it's with a person you disagree with. And I think that's a good reflection to have in considering this music. Like, I feel the exact same way. Like, no one's getting hurt. And if anything, like, on each side, there are points to be made. And it is challenging the way that the music is being made, consumed. It is challenging. It is introducing new genres, new types of artists. And, like, that I'm always going to be for. Like, this R&B right now is in the middle of, like, a really good debate. Like, a really good debate.
So is Janelle Monáe R&B? Because she released, a great project.
I'm not even thinking about Dirty Computer. Wow.
And, like, a project that, like, really, like, sort of bent, lines everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, from the whole theme of being bisexual and the whole theme of, like, is she bisexual or pansexual? I can't remember what she said.
Pansexuality is what she's still falling on.
If that's what she said, then that's what she is. I ain't here to say nothing about that.
I mean, people are just looking at it as a coming out, but she is claiming pansexuality.
Which is dope, right? But in any case, like, she had an amazing album that bent a lot of norms, that, like, did a lot of different things. It's still classified by a lot of people as an R&B album. So is that cool? Is that not cool? Because there's a body of work. Like, I listened to that, and it was dope, and I enjoyed it, and I actually saw her at Afropunk, too. Mm-hmm. And, oh, my God.
Yep.
Like,
killed it.
Boy, can she put on a performance. Like, see her before you die, for sure. Where would you put her? Or is she, like, part of, like, this new, like, resurgence of funk? Like, I don't...
Right. If I don't feel like I can answer the question, I always want to ask the artist, or I always want to consider how the artists consider themselves, and that's something still whether to, like, agree or disagree with, and I think it's still within my right as a consumer to be like, you're not that, like Anderson .Paak can tell you he's a playboy all he wants. I'm like, nope, you're a nerd, get back to your nerdy shit. Like, I have the right as a consumer to do that. So I would ask in asking Janelle Monáe, or even the idea, like, would you consider this R&B? I don't think she would consider it R&B. And I think she would say, if anything, I feel like the main reason why it would be considered R&B is because I am a woman of color. And just keeping that in mind, like, knowing anything about Janelle Monáe and her artistry, how she's considered herself, how she's identified herself, even up until this point, I don't think she would put herself in the R&B category because it would be considered a box, and still is considered a box.
I think she would say she makes some R&B songs.
Right. Like, I make R&B music, but I also make pop music. I also make funk music. I feel like that would be her answer. Like, I make music.
So what's interesting is, like, we already made the point, both of us made the point individually, which was nice, about how, women of color are often put in the box of R&B, right? But you also made the point of, I like asking the artists what they consider themselves. Mm-hmm. But, like, when an author writes a book, right? And it's happening a lot now with like Harry Potter and a lot of other books that have come out. And they put in the world. That work goes on to exist at its own. And then the author comes back and says a bunch of things about the book, and then you're unhappy.
You're ruined, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, like, my point is, like, yes, the artist has a lot of say about what their art is, but ultimately that art has a life of its own.
Right.
Right? If everyone listens to your shit, and, you know, if you take away the biases, everyone's like, yeah, nah, this is an R&B record. It's an R&B record.
It is, right.
Whether you like it or not, right?
Exactly, right. That's why I said as a consumer, you're allowed to be like, no, fuck that. It's not what it is.
I mean, so when you think about it, like, Drake had an R&B whole side to his album, right? He had, like, a side A and a side B. And so if you just take his R&B side, which we think is the weaker of the two sides, I think is the weaker of the two sides. Most people think is the weaker of the two sides. Like, he's also an R&B artist as well. It was terrible, but he's also an R&B artist. And I guess it goes back to my point about, like, once you put art out into the world, like, it becomes what it is, like, whether you like it or not. People will identify that as, like, the weaker side of his Scorpion album.
And do you think that's because it generally and genuinely, which it can be, is the weaker side? Or do you think it is because maybe he leaned too much on the R&B side and we're just so used to Drake giving us bars with his, like, sometimes tone-deaf singing, and that's what we needed?
So I think people wanted Drake to make a rap album, and I think he had to once Pusha pressed him, but I think Drake wanted to make an R&B album.
Yeah.
Right? Drake really liked those songs.
He likes singing to the host.
Yeah, he loves singing to the host. So I think that's, like, interesting to think about when it comes to, like, artist intention versus result.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've been thinking a lot about, because, like, you know, you've had a bunch of, like, different acts come out. Like, Post Malone comes out as a rapper every time, and, like, I don't like Post Malone. This is not an endorsement of Post Malone. The only thing Post Malone has done for me this year is he was on a song with Sway Lee on the Spider-Man soundtrack, and it's a hit, and I love Sway Lee, so, like, I'm very happy for that.
Shout out to Sway Lee, even though Post Malone's gonna get all the credit because it's a Post Malone song. The entire movie, all you heard was Sway Lee's part. Fuck that.
Which pisses me off.
Fuck that. Fuck that.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Like, it's Sway Lee's song, damn it. But, like,
oh my god, we're on the same page.
At least he's getting some shine from it.
Exactly.
But anyways, my point is, Post Malone, whether we like it or not, had one of the most, like, listened to albums of the year, apparently.
Yes.
According to numbers. And, you know, I don't think he's a rapper. Like, I think he just does...
He's not.
He just does his sing-songy thing, and he just happens to have braids.
And then, in every moment, I think he has a chance to prove himself as a hip-hop artist who he fucks it up. You know, he was like, I don't really listen to hip-hop. I'm more listening to fucking Jimmy Dean or whatever the fuck he said. Like, I don't really listen to hip-hop. I don't think... He didn't consider it classic music or something like that. He considered... Like, every time, like, I feel like he gets thrown a question like, hey, a rapper would answer the question, you know, this way. Not even like there's a correct or right or wrong answer. It's just like, this is what a real rapper, a real hip-hop artist who, like understands and respects the genre would say, and then he's like,
if you're looking for a culture, like an example of a culture vulture, Post Malone's a great example.
Perfection.
Like, it's all there for you, even from appropriating Allen Iverson of all people for his first, like, you know, hit single. You know what's wild is, like, I didn't want to do this, but I have to do this. Georgia Smith released an album, and it was... I love Georgia Smith, but I don't know if I love Georgia Smith for her music or the way she looks.
Oh my god.
But the thing is, like, one of the reasons what I didn't want to do what I just did is I forgot Georgia Smith released an album throughout the course of this conversation. Just the same way I forgot she released the album when I was doing my album of the year wrap up. The same way I forgot she released the album 2 weeks after she released the album.
I want you to go on record as, like, the first male, I feel like, to say that out loud. And I know that is in everyone's brain.
Look,
and I've only seen women kind of say that, like, do y'all really like this bitch's music, or do you like the way this bitch looks?
We love the way she looks,
and like, and I agree with you.
That's
like,
it.
I would
gorgeous.
stare at her.
She's
I would
gorgeous.
stare at her all day, every day. But it's like, and it's funny. It's like I think we've all seen so many, like, live videos circulating
of just, like, people, like, gawking,
like. Oh gosh, and like, even if Georgia would be like, all right, and people just retweet like, this ain't the best, but in all the comments are like, she's still bad though. She's still bad though. Is that what's happening to SZA? Is that what is happening to SZA?
Okay, let's have a conversation about SZA.
Because
SZA can make music. SZA just can't actually sing.
And are we going to allow her? Because, like I said, we allowed Rihanna.
But Rihanna is a sex symbol.
Yeah.
Right, well, now she's a lot more than that, and
without a doubt.
And I don't mean to take anything away from Rihanna. By
Not
saying
at all.
She was
this
a sex
is her
symbol.
music alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like,
that bitch is a mogul.
She got she got on top, especially in music, by becoming a sex symbol. Like, her music was sexual, and it was, like, sexually empowering, I'm sure, for a lot of women.
Yes.
And the other thing is, like, as a result of that, like, she gained more and more popularity, and she's a genius, clearly, and was able to sort of make an empire out of it. Georgia is being pushed into being a sex symbol without even, like, just by existing.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if she is,
That's
like,
real.
Rihanna.
Yeah.
Like, Rihanna is, like, I'm with the shits.
Right.
Like, I got
and
no
she
problem.
even said on air in front of Oprah's face, like, bitch, I didn't find myself sexy. That's what these niggas told me to be. And I was like, all right, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Literally.
She's with the shits. I don't know Georgia Smith personally, obviously. Otherwise, this would be a very different conversation. But based on the way she talks, based on the music that she put out, because I do remember it, and it wasn't terrible. Like, that's the thing. Her music is not terrible.
It's cool.
It's cool, right?
A capital COOL.
Yeah, very vibey, right? It's the vibes, right?
It's the vibes.
But, like, I don't think she wants to be a sex symbol. I think she wants to be a singer.
Right.
So, I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with her. Like, I just hope...
But, and again, so what does that mean for SZA? Because I sometimes feel like SZA's... I genuinely believe SZA's trying to be both.
Well, the thing about SZA is, like, Control, I don't think was supposed to be as big as it was.
Yeah.
Right? I think Top looked at it and was like, wow, we got to capitalize on this shit. Because this blew up.
The hoes love it.
Yeah, this blew up a lot
and
faster than we thought.
Did love it. They did.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The weekend is the weekend for girls.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the thing is, like, I don't know what to do when you have all that success, right? You follow it up with another album. So recently her stuff got leaked.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that or not. And I listened to it.
Did you see a lot of TDE music leaks?
Yeah,
right?
Someone in their camp is getting shot.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Without a doubt. We won't ever hear about it until the documentary comes out like 30 years from now.
And, you know, Punch is old and et cetera, et cetera. But I think what's interesting about SZA, though, is, like, she made this music, and she's clearly, like, a very hard worker. And she
Without a doubt.
And she was put into a place of stardom before she, I think, was ready, right? Because that stardom nearly broke her. I remember she had to forego her DC appearance because her voice was just, like, dying, right? Because Raven Lenae and Smino were on that tour with her, and they showed up to, like, Cloak and Dagger that night and, like, just, like, had a ball. But SZA herself, like, went into hiding, was, like, not around, came back, left. And I think what's going to be interesting with her is how do they manage all her needs as an artist.
Yeah.
And how they manage her needs as a person, you know? I also think that she can make music.
Without a doubt, yeah. I'm just confused by all this, like, shade and slander that she's kind of getting.
Well, the thing is, like, if you can't sing live and you're considered a singer, what do you have to offer?
Yeah.
Right? Especially in today's world where, like, everything's an Instagram clip and people are going to your show. So I went to the Roots show, not just Black Thought's show, a couple days ago. And one of the biggest things, first of all, the Roots has the most diverse fan base ever because of that late night thing. They were like 50-year-old white women.
So I believe it.
And they were like 18-year-old, like, you know.
That's
hip-hop
fucking
heads.
awesome.
Like, it was great.
I strive.
It was amazing, right? And what's interesting is, like, you go to the Roots show, and Black Thought is one of the best performance rappers ever. He can go song after song after song, no breaks in between. His breath control is perfect. Like, technically, as a rapper,
is hard to do.
It's really difficult, and, like, it's just amazing to listen to, right? When you can't deliver that sort of live performance, especially in today's age where music has become so interactive, it becomes a huge problem if you can't actually do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of rappers fall flat on the road because they rap over a backing track. And people hate it because it doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel immersive. Two of my favorite performances of all time, Broccoli City Fest 2016 or 2017, I can't remember. Now came out, and Now sings like she sounds, which is super rare. And one of the reasons she's continued success. The other one, Lil Yachty.
Great performer.
Lil Yachty can't rap for shit.
Great performer.
But he knows how to perform, right? So SZA has to do the same thing.
Yeah.
If she can't sing for shit, that's fine. How are you going to capitalize on the performance art to make yourself better?
And Rihanna's answer for that was sex. I'm going to drown these bitches in the fact that they all want to fuck me. No one cares what's coming out of my mouth. They want to go in it.
And you can... Well, yes.
Hey.
Yeesh. I mean, hey, it's not a bad thought. But like, if you look at Rihanna's performances, that's what she did, right? She made them super sexual.
Oh, it was fucking hot. Like, it was great. Yeah, like so many people. Like, I've never seen Rihanna live, but everyone that has seen Rihanna live, like, has either said like, oh, she sounded horrible, or it was the fucking best performance ever. She took her clothes off. I just wanted to crawl up on stage. Like, you know, even women, like, you know, even women that are completely into men, women that are, you know, completely not, like, literally everyone. Anyone that I saw her like at Made in America, like, all left with the same thought and feeling.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's what SZA's gonna have to do. Hopefully not in that way.
No. Yeah,
Like,
she's gonna have to find her thing.
Because that's not who she is,
right,
per se. Or that's not what, she's not necessarily with the shits like Rihanna was. And same thing for Georgia and a lot of these artists in Kansas. You know, we ain't shit. We forgot Tiana.
Okay.
We
Man.
Tiana Taylor.
Oh, I mean, okay.
I understand why we did. Kanye also forgot about her.
I love Tiana Taylor so much. I stand for Tiana Taylor, and it's so hard for me to use this album or to put this album in like the best of anything, especially because I don't feel like she would. I think I said that last time. I don't feel like she would. She's came on record and said, like, this is not the album that I thought I was putting out. This is not the album that I wanted to give to you guys. I promised to give you guys the correct one, and that never happened. So it's hard for me to use this album. Like, oh, I love Tiana Taylor's album because of like, if this bitch hates it, I do too. Because they fucked her.
Where does she go from here? Does she have to do everything she can to just get off good music?
I think so. And it's like, I understand why you would be weary of doing that because, like, honestly, the looks that she's been continuously getting have been because of who she's connected with. It's because she was in Kanye West's music video and looked fucking phenomenal. But, like, I believe that she is more talented than that. I believe that she can stand on her own. And for a little bit, she was doing that with the Sweet 16, all that shit, and she wasn't nowhere near, like, connected to Kanye, but she still had a name out there, you know? But it was, I think she needed to find her thing, and I don't feel like anyone had enough trust to really like bring that out of her, and I think Kanye was someone that presented himself as being that person that was going to do that, and she believed with for all intents and purposes that he was, and just did not, you know? Like, I feel like she went to Kanye honestly with the same hope that like Rihanna went to Jay-Z essentially, and was like, make me into this, like I have what it takes. And if anything, arguably Tiana would have more just because she can genuinely honestly sing, but it just didn't happen.
With that old fiasco, like, I still enjoyed the actual album, to be honest. Like, that's the thing, like, Tiana has so much talent that even, like, chopping up her songs incorrectly, mastering them incorrectly, I still enjoyed the song, right?
And
like,
it was, like, 6 songs, and 3 or 4 of the fucking 6 were fire.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, with all that talent, she has to be able to do something.
Okay.
Right? And so, that's why I don't want to leave her out of the conversation, because I'm like...
And I feel that.
I'm like, well... Through all
she
this
deserves
struggle,
to be there regardless.
And through all this, like, shit that happened throughout this year... They still play your song on the radio. That KTSC song, I think, they still play that on the radio. They still play your music when you go places. And that's important, right? Because struggling through that adversity and sort of pushing through is, you know, the mark of any good artist, unfortunately. It has to be. But that perseverance, I think, is going to, like, in the long run, help her
really help her. And I think in many ways it has. I've never seen certain artists, like, cape for her in the way that I've seen other artists that, like, didn't do anything wrong, like, or about to go to jail or some shit, or didn't, like, get caught cheating on their fucking wife for the 15th time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I've never seen people, like, cape for Tiana the way they did. Like, Snoop Dogg and, like, Monica. People really, like, listen to this album. It's phenomenal. You don't know how hard this girl works. Like, you don't know how phenomenal and how amazing and how genuine this artist is. Like, pay more attention to her.
Even when she hated her own album, it was still good.
Right.
And that's what I came away with it, right? Like, I like the album because I like the album. I understand that she's unhappy with it, and that sucks.
Yeah, but it was still good.
But
it was. Work This Pussy is a motherfucking hit.
It's a credit to her talent.
Gonna Love You, they play on the radio a lot, too.
Yes.
That's what I hear on the radio.
Gonna Love You, yes. Gonna Love You, they play
phenomenal.
Excuse me, not KTSC. But, yeah, that's the thing that I came away from Tiana's year with, and I hope she bounces back, but I also hope that she recognizes that this work is definitely worth something, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Because it shows her talent despite all the other stuff. So, who do you have this year that came out that no one knows about that you really want to push on the R&B side?
There's this artist, and I'm completely blanking on his name. You answer, and even though I hope we're not going to say the same thing.
Okay, for me, I'm going to push this girl that I found, not girl that I found, but this artist that I found named Umi.
Yes.
With a self-released album called Umi. And if you need a place to start, like, that is the place to start for music that will shake your soul while still putting you in a warm blanket. This is not the album to listen to if you just broke up with, like, a real one. This will put you in shambles. Aww. But if you've, been a couple months removed.
Right, trigger warning, everyone.
Yeah. But also, if you're with the real one, this thing will make you feel even better. But like I said, like, it will shake your soul. Like, you will feel a little scared on the inside when you listen to her, but you'll also feel like your mom putting a blanket on you. And those two feelings together, like, really just give you a sense of realness in the world, right? Like, you feel real for a second when you listen to her music. So that's who I would recommend. Who you got?
Okay, I found it. He is somebody that I'm realizing one of my favorite artists that I really hold true to my heart sometimes are the people that are introduced to me by other people. I think we both can say that we are someone that seeks music. We look for it.
For sure.
We look for new artists in all genres. So it really means something to me when people can put me on to people that I've never heard of. It means even more when, like, I hear somebody, I'm like, damn, who is this? But, you know, you don't really want to ask because it's not the right moment. And then you hear them again and in a different situation from another person. You're like, oh, wait, I've heard this before. Who the fuck is this? And like you hear it for the third time, like, God damn it, who is this? And then you just download their music immediately before even listening to it just because you know you're going to like it. That was this artist for me. His name is Mac Ayres.
Hey.
Yeah. He actually released a project in 2018, Something to Feel, which was great. It was phenomenal. And I can't remember the song right now. It might be Get to You Again because that's the one that I see that has a star next to it. But it was one song.
Get to You Again is an amazing
I heard it everywhere. And I remember hearing it being like at a kickback in Maryland. And like I heard the song was like, oh, what is this? But, you know, it was a kickback in Maryland. Niggas was sparking. I was like, I'll ask that another time. I'm in Atlanta and Lincoln with the homies. Some people I've never fucking met before, and I hear it on the speaker. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? I've heard this before. Then I'm back in Maryland chilling at Marcus's house. Shout out to Moody. And, like, he plays it again. He's like, I've been meaning to play you this artist. I really think you would like him. And I'm like, I've heard this one song 4.5 times in the past 2 months. Like, who is this? Who is this? And he's like, Mac. So yeah, Mac Ayres, Something to Feel, great project, great artist, and he's somebody that like I heard sing and and he's talented. He actually can sing. So lyricism aside or themes aside, I heard his voice and was like, I would like more of that. He's somebody that like I just go to his artist tab on iTunes and just play and do shit until it restarts.
What's the name of the album?
Something to Feel.
Something to Feel.
Yeah.
So Umi, self-titled Umi, UMI, and Mac Ayres, Something to Feel. I think one thing that Bria said that's so important is we love music recommendations. So feel free to drop your own favorites.
Please.
And feel free to recommend us shit that you think that we haven't heard. Even if we've heard it, there's nothing wrong with clicking on a link we've already heard before as well. So thank you for your time, and that's that.
Peace out, y'all.
Peace and love.